You ever look at everything, the universe, and just feel like there's got to be a simpler pattern underneath all the chaos? One single idea that connects the tiniest quantum particles with the vastness of the cosmos? Well, today we're diving into a theory that says there is, and it all starts with a pretty wild question.
I know, it sounds a little out there. But what if the answer is everything? According to a wild new idea called single-point theory, or SPT, the link is a surprisingly simple one. It all comes down to the physics of a whirlpool.
All right, before we get to rewriting physics, let's start with something we've all seen. A whirlpool. From water swirling down a drain to a huge hurricane on the weather map. Some of these things disappear in a second, right? But others can last for hours, even days. So, why? What's the difference?
Well, the key difference boils down to just one word: cohesion. Think about a little dust devil. It's got low cohesion, its parts are barely holding onto each other, so it just falls apart. But a massive tornado, that's got high cohesion. Its structure is incredibly tough and stable. And the core idea here is that this isn't just a handy metaphor. It's a real, measurable property of the universe.
Single-point theory actually puts a number on this idea. It's called the cohesion metric. You can think of it as a stability score. For any vortex to even exist, to persist, its score has to stay above a certain number, 0.5. If it drops below that threshold, poof, it's gone. It just unravels. This theory says that's a fundamental rule.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This is the big leap. If the simple rule of cohesion works for tornadoes, what if it also works for the most basic things in our universe? What if matter itself, everything you're made of, is just a bunch of unbelievably stable whirlpools?
So this brings us to the really radical claim of single-point theory. It's asking us to completely rethink what a particle is. Forget about tiny little billiard balls and start picturing them as these dynamic, spinning patterns of energy. And there it is. That's the core of it. An electron isn't a thing so much as it is a process. It's a self-sustaining vortex with a cohesion score so incredibly high that it's, for all practical purposes, permanent. And the same goes for the quarks that make up protons and neutrons. They aren't separate bits, they're all just different kinds of whirlpools.
Now, what's so cool about this is that it actually solves a massive headache in physics. See, a classic point particle has this problem where it has infinite density at its center, which, well, it breaks the math. It's a nightmare. But a vortex singularity is totally different. It's like the eye of a hurricane. It's a point of perfect calm right in the middle, where the energy waves cancel each other out and the amplitude drops to zero. No infinity, just a perfectly stable, quiet center.
So how do you get from a simple particle to something more complex? Well, you can picture an electron as the simplest possible stable vortex, kind of like a single spinning loop. A proton, on the other hand, is a true masterpiece of stability. It's not three separate little quarks rattling around in a bag. No, it's a single, much more complex vortex that's wound up in three interlocking loops. Those windings are what we've been calling quarks, and they're all trapped together in a configuration that is just insanely stable.
Okay, so if particles are just whirlpools, that leads to a pretty obvious and pretty profound question, doesn't it?
Exactly. A whirlpool needs water to whirl in. A tornado needs air. So if particles are vortices, what is the fundamental stuff of the universe that's doing all the whirling?
This is where the theory gets really mind-bending. According to SPT, there's no empty stage. There's no pre-existing space-time just waiting for things to happen in it. Instead, reality itself is generated by a single fundamental process, something called a primary cycle. So everything, space, time, particles, fields, it all emerges from this one constant underlying activity. It's like we're just seeing patterns on the surface of some impossibly deep, vibrating ocean.
And this process has a pulse, a fundamental rhythm that drives all of existence. And its frequency is, well, it's just staggering. It's 1.854 times 10 to the power of 43 times per second. That number is so huge it's hard to even wrap your head around. But that, right there, that is supposedly the clock speed of our universe? Okay, so we've got particles as these super stable vortices, all forming out of a single fundamental hum. So what? Why is this such a big deal? Well, because if this is true, this one simple idea might just elegantly explain some of the absolute biggest mysteries in all of physics. And this is where it gets really ambitious. You know that weird quantum pressure that keeps atoms from collapsing in on themselves? SPT says that's not some mysterious force, it's just the natural curvature of space-time that the vortex itself creates. And gravity? Not a fundamental force at all, but more like a background pressure that emerges from how all these little matter vortices interact with each other. And the biggest mystery of all, dark matter? Maybe it's not a missing particle. Maybe it's just a huge galaxy-sized twist in the fabric of the universe itself, a cosmic whirlpool holding everything together.
Look, this is a beautiful story, right? It's elegant, but is it actually science? Because a theory is only as good as its predictions. It has to be testable. And this is where single-point theory gets really exciting, because it makes some truly radical, very specific predictions that are totally different from our current models.
And we can actually go out and test these things. SPT predicts that we should be able to use specially twisted laser light to literally imprint these vortex patterns onto atoms and create new particles. It predicts we'll find unique energy shifts in super heavy atoms that the standard model just can't explain. And maybe most excitingly, it suggests that when we smash heavy ions together in a particle collider, we should see these unexpected jets of positrons flying out, the telltale signature of a vortex core collapsing under extreme pressure.
I think this quote from the source material really just says it all. The whole idea of the singularity, which for 100 years has been this mathematical problem, this thing that breaks the equations, it gets flipped on its head. It's no longer a bug in the system, it's the central feature. It's the very thing that explains why our universe is stable and why energy comes in discrete packets or quanta.
So, is this the answer? Is our incredibly complex reality really just a grand symphony of interlocking vortices all spinning and humming along to the same fundamental note? You know, we don't know for sure. But what's so compelling about single-point theory is that for the first time, it suggests we might finally be learning how to read the music.